The following podcast is a TJ DeSantis production. Comments, questions, and inquiries can be sent to DeSantisProd@gmail.com. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
Gangsters, what's up, guys?
John Anik, Kenny Florian.
Oh, my God!
You want a podcast? Great. So you have some audio on your website that nobody goes to.
Here are your hosts, John Anik and Kenny Florian.
I mean, how good is this? Kenny Florian in all his glory right across the way. Thursday, July 27, 2017, episode 116 of the Anik and Florian podcast. First in studio show since April 9th of 2015. We got video today, Flo.
I know. I'm a little nervous.
I got makeup on.
Did you put makeup?
Yeah, a little Mac Foundation, NW35. Never hurt anybody.
I'm allergic to Mac myself, so I break out.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
so that's good. Yeah. So no brush sharing inside this studio, that's for sure. So this is exciting, and we can't promise that we're going to be on video every episode, but I'm going to try to get a webcam in South Florida, and maybe you'll come in studio.
We got to do
TJ
it.
DeSantis is here in all of his glory as well.
Yes, sir.
So this is exciting, and it's a big fight week, obviously. We pushed out a Ray Longo minute on Monday, and we will recap Long Island a little bit today. I at least want to get your thoughts on Chris Weidman and time permitting Darren Elkins and Jimmy Rivera. How about the fucking damage Darren Elkins?
He's a monster. He fought his ass off and deserved that win.
So we'll try, time permitting, to recap some of that. Obviously, we're going to get Ken-Flo's picks on UFC 214. We're going to talk to Michael Bisping here coming up in a couple minutes. Brandon Gibson, who will be in John Jones's corner this weekend, is going to join us live. Dean Thomas, who will be in Tyron Woodley's corner. He's with T. Wood right now. T. Wood's on the treadmill as we speak, so we're going to try to grab Dean Thomas as well. And then Matthew Holt from Vegas to do some picks against the Flow in the main event challenge. So a lot to get to today. And I just want to start with that UFC Tonight 8-minute hit with John Jones and Daniel Cormier. You know, I'm always banging on the show UFC Tonight. I'm always telling you I don't watch the show. So I didn't see it. No, I did watch it. I did watch it. So for those who haven't seen it, those guys just, I think, forgot for a second that it was actually a television show going on and that you and Michael Bisping were a part of this interview. Yeah. But they got pretty amicable at times, which was super weird, I thought. And then they ratcheted up the hatred once again.
Yeah, it's awkward, man. It's like this love-hate relationship that they have. Mostly hate, of course. But it was interesting because we heard them off camera as well. I mean, it was nonstop. So they did a series of interviews, across the country with various media outlets, and we were kind of hearing all their interviews. And then, obviously there would be maybe a minute break in between each interview, and you'd kind of hear them go back and forth, and they were fighting out over stuff. It was funny, but they genuinely do not like each other, and they can't wait to punch each other in the face, which always makes it fun.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear them say that. At least John said, burying the hatchet and shaking DC's hand, because I did not expect that would happen. And then, of course, Cormier said, as soon as I leave the octagon with my belt, thereby go away the pleasantries. But, they do not like each other, and it obviously makes for a very interesting backdrop. You have as good a historical framework for this sport as anybody that I've ever talked to. Is this the most heated rivalry in UFC history? And if it isn't, I mean, it's certainly got to be top 3, top 5, right?
Absolutely top 3. That's for sure. But more than anything else, the hate is real. But you're talking about the 2 best light heavyweights in UFC history going at it, and it's so rare that you actually have that at the same time. Obviously, you look at their resumes and what they've done. These are 2 Hall of Famers for sure, going at it, and just an interesting style matchup, and I'm really curious to see how John Jones comes back here against Cormier, who really needs this fight here.
I talked to all 24 fighters on the fight card on Tuesday. It's something that we've done over the last several months, and John Jones just could not be in a better place. And I'm sure you gleaned some of that in your interview with him yesterday. Mm-hmm. He said he's not going to walk in that octagon much more than 217 pounds, and that, to me, would figure to be a dangerous proposition for Daniel Cormier. The fact that Jones is leaner than ever, seemingly hasn't lost much strength, and should have a speed advantage against DC.
He looked very lean, and I think he wanted to send that message. I know DC has thrown that message around that, you do steroids and blah, blah. And he took his shirt off, I think, for a reason to show, listen, I'm in the best shape of my life. I don't care what you say. And he looked him up and down. I mean, he was sizing him up, and I believe he mouthed the words, "You ain't shit," to DC after.
Yeah.
I've never been more scared of John Jones in my life. Whatever he's doing, the shaved head, the little chin hair he's got going on, the serious look. He looks pissed, and he looks scary.
Yeah, our buddy Brendan Schaub, I think, said that John Jones is going full serial killer mode in advance of this one after that interview on the Fox broadcast over the weekend. So we'll see. As far as DC is concerned, and Michael Bisping going to join us here in a couple minutes. He just needs a few. So DC's 19-1, never been finished in professional mixed martial arts, 13-0 as a heavyweight, right?
Yep.
5-round war with Josh Barnett, beat Frank Mir, Roy Nelson, a lot of different other guys. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad to hear you mention him as a future Hall of Famer, but it's crazy to me just how underappreciated this guy's body of work is. I mean, you can argue that his win over Alexander Gustafsson was more dominant than John Jones's was. Yes. I think it was a split decision win for DC over Gustafsson. And DC also has 2 wins over the consensus greatest power threat that Octagon has ever hosted in Anthony Rumble Johnson. I know John Jones never got the chance to fight Rumble, but DC did twice, and he beat him both times. And I just feel
finished him both times.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just feel like DC's body of work doesn't get nearly the credit that John's does. And if he gets this one, obviously that narrative will change.
Yeah, and that's the problem with having the greatest pound-for-pound fighter we've ever seen in the same division. And but here's the opportunity for DC is he can definitely rewrite that story with a win over Jones.
All right, so Jones 22-1. Yeah, DC 19-1. It was a split decision over Alexander Gustafsson. And one thing DC told me, I was going to save this, I should say, for the broadcast on Saturday, but he said for the second Rumble Johnson fight, and maybe this was part of the issue with the scale, that he was definitely in shape, and he wanted to make it clear, I was definitely fit, but he just said there was too much comfort in his mentality. He felt like there was a clear path to victory against Rumble Johnson, push the pace, extend Rumble, and against John Jones, there's not necessarily a clear path to victory. If you don't take care of the things that precede the fight, the weight cut and everything else, fight night ain't going to be much fun.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. And having been there for the camp in that second fight against Anthony Rumble Johnson, I think DC had this feeling that, you know what, I already beat him. I know exactly what I need to do. And I think he got a little comfortable, if I'm being frank. And I think, candidly, he didn't get up for that fight against Anthony Rumble Johnson. Right. He knew what he needed to do. He already had a win over him. When you fight a guy like John Jones, and this is his first and only professional loss, you're going to get motivated. You're going to get up for a fight like this. And I think you just see that difference in DC's eye now. He really wants this.
And he is leaner. He is lighter Monday and Tuesday of fight week than he's been in the past, certainly than what he was at UFC 206 in Toronto. So I guess we'll see if it pays dividends. So for John Jones, he's gone the distance 7 times as a pro, just 7 times. But his last 4 fights have all gone the distance. Last finish for Johnny Bones, Chael Sonnen, April 2013, more than 4 years ago. Of course, a big part of that is because he's only fought once in the last 30 months, only one fight for Jones since that first meeting with DC, which was January of 2015. A lot of people fall on one side or the other when it comes to ring rust or octagon rust. You know, Dominic Cruz, as ornery as he can be, our boy. But he just is so dismissive of that talk, and he just feels like it's a mentality, and 3 years off, you can still come back like he did and like the Korean Zombie has done and perform. But a lot of people denigrated Jones's performance against Ovince St. Preux. John was critical of the performance after the fact. Then he stepped back from that a little bit after going back and watching the film. TJ and I disagree a little bit on this. We talked about it on the car ride over. I thought it was dominant. I mean, John was not touched over 25 minutes against OSP, but it wasn't vintage John Jones, and it left the door open, I guess, for some criticism.
I agree, and here's the thing. You know, we talked to John Jones about that, that he did take some criticism from Cormier, and he was saying, listen, I took the fight. It was a short notice fight, really, and he's an awkward opponent. I didn't want to get cracked with that left hand. I was very cautious about it. And he said, listen, I study fights. I sit down and watch tape with Greg Jackson. We break down opponents. I didn't have a whole lot of time to do that. That's what makes him such a smart fighter. And I don't think you can judge or should judge John Jones on that performance against OSP.
Yeah. So we're going to spend the bulk of the show, I would imagine, on Jones-Cormier. But the forgotten fight is this UFC welterweight championship between Tyron Woodley and Damian Maia. Nobody's talking about that fight. And this has the potential to be a really great fight. I think it can go in any number of different ways. But I want to start with Damian Maia because he fought Gamebred Jorge Masvidal May 13th, right? Yeah. Then he went home, was being a father, spending some time with his kids. This is a natural middleweight. It's not the easiest cut. Now, I talked to him this week. He says, the weight cut's great. My weight is normal. It shouldn't be an issue. But he said they just had to be so efficient with the time that they had to try to make some strategic changes for a guy like Tyron Woodley. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned about the quick turnaround as a factor for Maia.
Well, you know what? I tried to get Damian Maia on the podcast. His manager said, listen, we are spending every second we can getting ready for this fight, cutting the weight. They didn't have a whole lot of time. People forget that Damian Maia fought at 185 pounds for a large part of his career. Fought for the belt at 185 pounds. So he is a very large welterweight. You saw it at the stare down. If you saw the presser yesterday, looked huge compared to Woodley. Not that Woodley's the biggest welterweight in the world, but Maia just is very big. This is the kind of stuff, I think the business decisions that make Tyron Woodley so smart as well, is he was very strategic in his approach here. He said, you know what, I'm going to wait. He knew that Maia wanted to fight, I think, at the end of August, and he goes, no, I've been training. I knew that he basically knew he was going to fight Maia. He was preparing kind of in secret the whole time, and then said, I'm going to give you a month to prepare, buddy. Here you go. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, and so this will be the third title defense for Tyron Woodley, who still feels underappreciated when it comes to his body of work, but I know he's happy to have that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson chapter closed, at least for now. But there's no doubt that this was strategic on Woodley's part. And you heard Dana White say yesterday, all indications are that the winner of this Woodley-Maia fight, if George St. Pierre is on board, would defend the belt against GSP. Now, I know St. Pierre's your former training partner. I do have some strong opinions about some of the more active welterweights, guys like Masvidal, who granted lost his last fight, close fight against Damian Maia. But I think that's the right course of action. I mean, would you agree that for Michael Bisping to be fighting these natural middleweights, guys like Robert Whittaker, Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman, Jacare Souza, and for George St. Pierre to return after a 4+ year layoff to do so at his more natural 170 pounds? Or?
I think it's a safer thing for George St. Pierre. I think for GSP to fight a huge guy like Michael Bisping at 185 pounds, I think it's a big risk. I don't think it's a risk he needs to take. I think Bisping is one of those strikers who has developed his power over the years and now really knows how to knock someone out and hurt guys. Yeah. I don't know if George really wants to take that approach at this point in his career. I would like to see him at 170 pounds, but as far as the best business decision for George St. Pierre, for the UFC, and for Michael Bisping, it's for that fight to happen. However, if George does win, what does he do with the belt? He's not going to defend it. Yeah, so it's just a tricky situation all around, you know?
So for Damian Maia, what is the path to victory without revealing your prediction, which we're going to get to later in the show? I mean, seemingly he would have to try to take Tyron Woodley down and ideally try to keep him there. I mean, how realistic is it that Maia can consistently take Woodley down? All right, back more on that in a second. But now joining us on the guest line, you know, I tried to book Callum Bisping today, but he was not available. So I guess we'll settle for the UFC middleweight champion, future Hall of Famer Michael Bisping is with us. Champ, I know you're busy, buddy. Thank you for the time today, sir. How are you?
I am very, very well. And, you know, getting Callum on a phone or anything at this time of the morning is incredibly hard. I just tried to get him to come to the gym with me, and, you know, typical teenager doesn't want to get out of bed, the lazy shit.
Well, hey, I don't blame him, man. Sleep is underrated. So at this point, I mean, in all seriousness, does Callum, like, have higher upside than you? I mean, he's tough. He's got size. Like, I'm all in on Callum Bisping as a combat sports guy.
Oh, dude, listen, I say to him all the time. I mean, that's why I wanted him to come to the gym this morning. I'm doing MMA sparring. A friend of mine is getting ready for a fight in M1 in Finland. So I'm going down to do some sparring with him. And Callum's wrestling is exceptional these days. He's winning gold at every tournament he goes to. He doesn't want to fight, but still he does jiu-jitsu and he does grappling. I'm like, son, come down and just be, you know, experience the energy in the gym. It's a positive place for him to be. He was in a wrestling camp last week. And as I said, it's been a week now, and he's been lying in bed like a lazy bastard every morning. So I was like, dude, come on, out of bed. And he's like, oh, I've got to do a blood test for wrestling today. I'm like, okay, you dodged the bullet this morning, but tomorrow morning we're in the gym.
So does he play football as well or no?
He did play football when he first came out here, but then he tried wrestling, and he's just all in on the wrestling. He absolutely loves it. He's obsessed with it. Yeah. You know, and to be honest, he was, you know, he's built for a footballer, but, you know, obviously we grew up in England. He didn't really have. I mean, he understands the game, of course, but he wasn't in love with the game.
Yeah, well, that's good because you will find no bigger fan of American football in the NFL than me. But if I had boys, man, there's no way I'm letting them play football. And I know that's maybe not a minority opinion, but there's a fucking car crash on every play, dude. I mean, it's nasty.
Wrestling is much safer, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I mean, I see tragically these stories of young boys passing away now and again. And, the risks are real. It is definitely a dangerous sport. And listen, all combat sports are dangerous. But, the very essence of that game is to drive into somebody with your head and try and take them out. So, fortunately, Callum has more brains than me.
Yeah.
We all know that I am exceptionally articulate and very, very intelligent. But believe it or not, Callum actually has more brain cells than me, which is astonishing, but it's true. So we're trying to hold on to them.
Yeah, man. He's got a nice girlfriend. He seems to have everything at his fingertips right now. So, all right, so Chris Weidman wins last weekend, and I would imagine, Mike, that you expected that your name would be coming out of his mouth shortly thereafter if he won that fight.
Yeah, so it's funny. I was actually sat with Callum, and I picked Weidman to win that fight.
Right.
We myself and Luis J. Gomez, we do our own podcast, and we did predictions. And he spoke about Gastelum, and he had Gastelum in a parlay. I said, "You're fucking crazy, man." I said, "There's no way Gastelum wins this fight." Anyway, we watched it, and I said to Callum, I said, "Oh yeah, there you go. Weidman won. Won. I knew that was going to happen." I said, "Watch him. He's going to call me out now." And Callum said, no, he won't. I said, he will. And then, sure enough, that British bomb, yada, 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 whatever he said, and there we go. And I got a kick out of it. I got a laugh out of it. And he didn't refer to me by my name, though. He called me a British bomb. So I just tweeted out, say my name, bitch. Having a bit of fun, and then it kind of went to the gutter pretty soon after that. But, fair play to him. That was his moment. He's enjoying himself. He's basking. He's forgotten what it feels like to be a winner because it's been so long. I mean, he has been destroyed for the last 2 years in every fight that he's gone in. So he was just high on adrenaline and high on the moment. And God bless him. Enjoyed that experience, Chris.
Mike, I know you didn't even really want to talk about him because you feel like he's not even close to deserving a shot. Is that correct?
Well, no, he's not. Let's be honest. He just lost his last 3 in a row. Generally, when you get knocked out 3 times in a row, you get cut from the UFC. Now, he's a former champion. He's got a brand name. People know who he is. He's been good to the company. So I wouldn't expect him to get cut. But it's a far cry from being considered for a world title fight. That's for sure. So I don't want to talk up all these fights that in reality aren't going to happen. I mean, listen, right. I've got no qualms fighting Chris Weidman, but I'll say it again, and I've said it before, as a champion, you want to maximize on that potential, on that time, because it doesn't last forever. So you don't want to take every fight you can get if it's not going to sell and do big business. This is my time now to maximize my potential, to earn some money, and try and set myself up for the rest of my life. And fighting a guy that's just been knocked out fucking 3 times in a row is not going to do that.
Now, Mike, I've never been more confused about a division than the middleweight division right now, right? I mean, you were supposed to fight Whitaker. He was the one who beat Romero for the interim title. He hurt his knee. Where do you go from here? What is the fight? Obviously, George St. Pierre, I know he called into your podcast, Believe You Me. There's a little plug for you. The other day, what did he say, and what's the approach from here?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Listen, and you're absolutely right, Kenny. The middleweight division kind of is in disarray, and I'm at the top of it, but it's not really by my design. Right. Of course, I'll just do a little history lesson. UFC offered me Dan Henderson less than 48 hours after beating Rockhold. I beat him. Mm-hmm. Then UFC offered me George St. Pierre. I gladly accept. Then the fight falls through. Then they say the winner of Whitaker and Romero. I say my knee's injured because it was injured. You've seen me limping about the Fox studios. So then they do an interim title fight. I say, sure, go ahead. Who fucking cares? It just means the fight will be bigger because they can market it as champion versus champion. Right. On the tough finale fight recently in Vegas on the Friday, I negotiated a deal with Craig Pelagian, the producer of The Ultimate Fighter, and Dana White, agreeing to coach and fight, to coach against and to fight the winner of the Whittaker and Romero fight. So I accepted, in essence, a fight against both of those people. So all these people that like to say that I'm fucking ducking everyone, they're out of their minds. I accepted either one. I didn't care who it was going to be. I accepted it. Whittaker won the fight. Whittaker didn't want to do Whittaker didn't want to do the Ultimate Fighter, and it turns out that he's now got a knee injury as well. So here we are once again back in disarray. I want to fight before the end of the year. God knows I want to get paid. I want to earn some money. I'm not getting any younger, but I don't know who it's going to be. I mean, Yoel just lost the interim title fight, so what is the point in fighting him?
Right.
I'm trying to get the GSP thing going. GSP called into the podcast, as you said. George, basically, you know George, he's very polite. He just expressed his desire to fight me, said he wanted to fight me, all this type of stuff. Nothing too inflammatory, nothing too, nothing too big, really. You know, he just said, I want to fight you. I said, I want to fight you. Well, let's do it. Let's make some money. He said that he wants to fight me because my stock is the highest right now. But that was about it. I mean, we'll see what happens. Dana said yesterday that ship sailed. I don't see how the ship can fucking sail, though. If George is saying he wants to fight me, and I'm saying I want to fight him, this isn't ancient Rome. We're not fucking slaves.
Right. UFC middleweight champion Michael Bisping joining us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. So you were scheduled to fight Robert Whittaker, I believe, at UFC 193. That didn't happen. Were you actively preparing to fight him at that point in time?
You know, yes, of course I was for the first couple of weeks, and then I had some loose bodies floating around in my elbow, and I had to have them removed. It was causing me a lot of discomfort and pain, and hindering my ability to train. But regarding training, pretty much this whole year, I mean, people like to talk, and they see these little clips of me training here and there, and they say, oh, wow, I thought you were injured. You know, listen, I am injured. I'm still injured now. I'm going to the doctors on the way home. But that doesn't mean that I'm not doing a bit of training here and there. Hitting a bag, hitting a few pads, doing some stuff like that is one thing. Doing a training camp, an intense training camp for 8 weeks, 2 sessions a day, 6 days a week, that's a very, very different thing. But even when I was doing those training sessions, I didn't know if I was doing footwork for George St. Pierre, Robert Whittaker, or against the southpaw against Yoel Romero. So I was doing a little bit of everything.
So your win over Anderson Silva, and people are going to think I'm kissing your ass here, but I'll take it. So I didn't call the fight, but I was in the building just watching it as a fan in London, and I've said repeatedly on this show, it is the most inspired I have ever been by a professional athlete live in person, just your desire to stay in the fight, unlike some other guys we see whose names will not be mentioned. Have you watched that fight back in the last year?
Do you know what? I haven't, not in the last year. Generally I don't watch my fights. You know, I mean, if you come into my house, other than seeing 2 belts in the display cabinet, that's all you will see. There isn't shrines of me. There isn't pictures. I don't have fucking effigies of myself. I don't have this and that. I don't sit and watch my fights. You know, listen, it's cool. I enjoy what I do. I love it, but I love my wife and children more, and you know, this is just a little part of who I am as a person. So, you know, I don't bask in my own glory, sit there and jerk myself off watching me fucking fight Anderson Silva. But I have seen it, and I was proud of it. I thought I clearly won the fight, and yeah, man, round 4 and 5, I had to dig deep, that's for sure.
All right, a few rapid-fire questions here on the way out with Michael Bisping. All right, better fighter, Bob Whittaker or Chris Weidman?
Robert Whittaker by far. Chris Weidman on the Sonnen Gagey scale ranks a 1.
All right, Michael, when you are inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, who will you choose to be the person to induct you?
Either my wife or Jason Perillo.
Okay, I thought it might be Perillo. All right, buy or sell, Callum Bisping has at least one amateur mixed martial arts fight.
Yes.
At least one amateur fight. All right, and then and then final question, man. Are you looking forward to retirement and the TV work and hanging out with your kids? I mean, don't you get sick of the grind at some point? I mean,
hanging out with
Christ.
Kenny Florian. Yeah.
Well, hanging out with Kenny is actually a very good time. We share a lot of laughs. But I'll tell you this. It scares me to death, guys. It fucking scares me, man. It really does. Because listen, I mean, my mum and dad were great. They loved me very much, and my dad worked hard and this and that, but there was no silver spoon in my mouth, mate. No fucking silver spoon. Far from it. And, I didn't get an education. I left school at 16, and I've done every shitty dead-end job under the sun. And I still remember being flat broke and borrowing money off my mum when she didn't have any money to start with, and just not being able to pay bills. And now we live a very good lifestyle. And I want my kids to continue to live in that lifestyle. I don't spend money. I don't do it. All right, I've got a nice car, so fucking what? I'm allowed to have a nice car. But generally, I don't spend any money. If you look at my bank balance, the only money that gets spent is my wife and kids going here, there, and everywhere while I'm working. And I do it all for them. And I'm just scared of when, there's shit on the table and things go well. I mean, yesterday I was at an audition, then I was at a meeting, then I went to UFC tonight, then I did interviews. And, it's the same today. It's non-stop. That's why you couldn't get through. I'm negotiating going out to Australia and doing some appearances there. I'm a tireless worker. And retirement scares me. Yeah, I can't wait to fucking retire because, believe it or not, getting punched in the face is getting kind of old.
Right. Well,
but at the same time, I do enjoy delivering a good punch to the face. So, maybe 2 more fights, and that's me done.
All right, well, you're gracious, man, to fit us in today. We'll see you on the desk this weekend. I think you should drink before the show this time, though.
Why do you say that? I've never drank before the show.
No, I'm saying I think you should. I think for a weigh-in show, a couple shots of whiskey not going to hurt anyone.
Well, you know what? I will give that a try one time, but it'll have to be our little secret. I'm not sure that falls in with the Fox code of conduct.
That's right.
Fuck it, who gives a shit? They don't know. Listen, I talk like I'm drunk anyway, so
right, there you go. There you go. I used to do Boston radio with a little whiskey in my system, full disclosure. So, all right, champ, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate the time, and we look forward to seeing you on the desk this weekend, man. Thank you.
Anytime, fellas. Keep up the good work. See you tomorrow, Kenny.
See you tomorrow, Mike.
All right, Michael Bisping with us live. Hall of Famer, by the way.
Oh,
Okay,
100%.
Number 1 all time in UFC wins with 21 and defended the belt. His haters need to find something better.
He's a savage.
So there's Michael Bisping live on the Anik and Florian podcast. All right, right back to the guest line now, and we're sorry to have kept him waiting. 6-gun striking. One of the best striking coaches in the game, who this weekend walked shoulder to shoulder with John Bones Jones. Brandon Gibson is with us. Very kind of you, man, to give us 5 or 7 minutes today. I know this is kind of a nuisance, buddy. How's your week going?
No, it's not a nuisance at all. Thanks for having me on, John and Kenny. Our week's going really good. John's looking sharp, Cowboys looking sharp, and we're definitely enjoying California so far.
So how do you manage the schedule, right, when John maybe wants to take a 3-hour nap yesterday and then hit pads or get a sweat in at 3 o'clock in the morning? I mean, I got to feel like you, during a fight week like this with 2 or 3 people, you're burning it at all ends.
There's no doubt about that. And fortunately, both Donald and John get along really well. And, they both know they are in need of my services this week. And so they're both pretty flexible and accommodating with the time and the schedule, and we get it done. We get all the work in. So it's great to have 2 of my top guys on the same card. And, in addition to me, we also have a really strong team. Coach Tusa's out here helping with jiu-jitsu, Izzy Styles here with our wrestling program, and we got a strong team. And Greg Jackson and Mike Winkeljohn are going to be coming in later today.
Crazy week, and yet somehow carving out a few minutes for the Anik and Florian podcast. All right, so let's start with Johnny Bones here, Brandon. He looks lean. He looks mean. I mean, he really looks ready to put on a show, and it was hard not to see your excitement on UFC Embedded as to what he might be able to accomplish this weekend.
Yeah, I haven't got a chance to check out that Embedded yet, but I'm going to be sure to. But I'm definitely excited. John's, this has been a really long camp. It's taken a lot of faith and belief in each other and this team to get to where we're at, on the cusp of this big fight. And, it's been a long road, and I really want to leave Saturday with John having that belt strapped around his waist. That's the goal.
Brandon, obviously DC's been the more active fighter. Do you think he's a different fighter from the first time that these two first faced off, and how is Jones different?
Yeah, of course. I think TC has improved drastically. His boxing's gotten that much sharper. His wrestling looks great. His defense is drastically improved in the fights that he's been champion in. And on top of that, he has that mentality. He knows he's the champion now, and that belief in himself and his skill and abilities is a very powerful thing. But John has also drastically improved. And, while we haven't made that walk as many times as TC has in the past 2 years, John has been in the gym grinding day in, day out, improving all of his skills. And I do think that this is like a new chapter for John. And for as dominant as he was in his 20s, I think we're going to see him enter a new phase of domination in the UFC.
When the lights come on, John seems to burn even brighter, it seems. You never see him really get nervous. But was it a concern of yours that John hasn't been as active as DC lately?
Obviously I would have loved John to be fighting every, 5-6 months, but that's not the case. And in the UFC, title shots are few and far between, and nothing's guaranteed. So when you get these opportunities, you just have to take them. And, there isn't really warm-up fights in the UFC either. Everybody likes to bring that up, but, this isn't boxing. There's no easy fight in the UFC, whether the guys are ranked outside the top 15 or not. So every fight's dangerous. And but the one thing we have on DC is 5 rounds of experience to go back and look at. And these guys have a very heated relationship that's been going on for years now. And there's one person I do feel comfortable with John coming right out and fighting right off the gate. It is DC, because it gets him fired up. It gets him in the gym. It gets him training hard. It gets him focused and motivated. And there's not much else I can ask for as a coach.
Brandon Gibson with us on the Anik and Florian podcast on Twitter. He is at 6Gun Gibson. So you said his ground and pound in particular this week was as sharp and ferocious as ever. The camp has seemingly gone very well. Is it even possible for you as a coach? And my memory's not great, but to compare where he is now mentally and physically to where he was going into that first DC fight in January of 2015?
I think it's in a much better place. John's continuing to mature. He's been through all these trials and tribulations, and I do believe he's learning from his mistakes. And we have a much more disciplined and focused version of John Jones than we did in that first bout. There's a lot less distractions. He's hungry, and I think he's ready to just go out and put on a statement, solidifying his legacy as a UFC light heavyweight champ.
Yeah, I remember even a couple years ago after the DC win, and I mentioned to him sort of as an outro on the post-fight show that he was the greatest mixed martial arts athlete of all time. And at that time, he was very dismissive of that talk. He didn't want to hear it. He said he had a lot of work still to do. Now he seems to be embracing that. I asked him Tuesday, do you want to be the Michael Jordan of MMA? He says, absolutely, I want to retire as the number one guy. Do you get the sense that he wants to not just win this fight, but stay active, defend the belt, and ideally, be a champion that the UFC can rely on 3 or 4 times a year? Or maybe am I getting ahead of myself a little bit?
No, we discussed that a lot. He just turned 30. I think he still has quite a few years left of being a very dominant champion. And I think the plan is to fight 2 or 3 times a year. Let's keep going. Let's keep improving. Our team is only getting stronger. And there's still a lot of intriguing matchups in the light heavyweight division, and maybe even if the right matchup comes up in the heavyweight division. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. He's definitely focused on DC. This is one of our biggest challenges yet. And I think after this weekend's performance of beating the second all-time greatest light heavyweight fighter, there'll be no doubt John's the greatest of this weight class, and in my opinion, the greatest mixed martial artist of all time.
All right, we'll get you out of here on this. I know you've really helped Donald Cowboy Cerrone take his game to the next level. He's a slight betting underdog against Robbie Lawler. Your expectations for Cowboy after what is his longest layoff since he waited to fight Rafael Dos Anjos for the title a couple years ago. What are we going to see from Cowboy on Saturday night?
This is a fight that I'm excited for as a fan. Cowboy versus Robbie Lawler, that's wild.
It's a super fight, man.
We were supposed to be matched up at Madison Square Garden last November. It didn't end up happening. Then last July 3 weeks ago, I guess, and here we are now. So it's kind of been a long camp for Robbie Lawler. Great fighter, great champion. I think areas that other fighters have shown success against Robbie Lawler in are areas that Cowboy is that much more efficient and sharp and technical and powerful in. So I think Cowboy has the tools to really exploit Lawler's defense. And, I think he's in a great place mentally. He's in a great place physically. I think the layoff and the break has been really good for Cowboy to get to focus on other things. And, he fights so much, so often. It's not just the fights that are hard on his body. It's obviously the camps. Right. And, Bisping was just talking to it, how hard a camp is. And I think having a break for Donald has been really good. And I think we get to go out there and show a rejuvenated, fresh, focused Donald Cowboy Cerrone, and I'm really looking forward to this fight. It's going to be a good one.
All right, big weekend for Donald Cerrone, big weekend for Jon Jones, and, of course, that means a big weekend for Brandon Gibson, one of the classiest people I've met in mixed martial arts. Thank you, buddy, for the time, and we'll see you at the weigh-in there tomorrow morning.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, John. Thanks, Kenny.
All right, Brandon Gibson with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. And, one thing that's interesting is that when Jon Jones doesn't fight, guys like Greg Jackson and Brandon Gibson don't get paid, right? Yeah. So, and maybe they got a little something for UFC 200 after he was unable to make the walk. But, right, these are men with families and wives, right? Brandon Gibson has put in a lot of time with Jon Jones over 7 years. And over the last 3 years, he hasn't realized a whole lot of money from that. And, this is just me speculating, right? But you got to go home to a wife and be like, hey, I just spent the last 2 months with Jon Jones. I got nothing to show for it. So it'd be nice for Brandon if Jon Jones could fight 3 or 4 times a year.
Right? That would be nice. Absolutely. I mean, these coaches put in so much time, and you talk about Brandon Gibson, who's in the gym all the freaking time. I mean, people don't know that he was a pretty good professional fighter and had a lot of fights. And I imagine his body's probably worse from training, holding pads for all those monsters than it was when he was fighting for all those years.
His arms must be numb every other morning when he wakes up. Well, support for the Anik and Florian podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. They understand that home plays a big role in your life and family. That's why they created Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Mortgage gives you the confidence you need when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. It's simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. Whether you're looking to buy your first home or your 10th, with Rocket Mortgage, you get a transparent online process that gives you the confidence to make an informed decision. It's convenient. Our trusted partners allow you to share your financial information with Rocket Mortgage at the touch of a button, and in addition to getting a real mortgage approval in minutes, you can even adjust the rate and length of your loan in real time to make sure you're getting the right solution for you. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Anik, rocketmortgage.com/ANIK, equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org, number 3030. All right, so I'm sure you didn't listen to the show on Monday. I figure you have better things to do than listen to me and Ray Longo do 25 minutes. But
just missed it.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I'm never watching UFC tonight again. So we're even.
I was busy.
I get it. So obviously we weren't scheduled to do a show, but I wanted to give Ray a microphone given what happened with Chris Weidman. And it was a pretty emotional night. I mean, I'm a Bostonian, right? So, I'm never rooting for these New Yorkers, and I'm not afraid to say it, right? Some people would think, oh, you have Longo on your show every week. I mean, in your heart, you must be rooting for Chris Weidman. And it's in my heart, I'm born in Boston, Massachusetts. It's hard for me to feel good for New Yorkers.
Right.
That said, it was hard not to feel good for Chris Weidman, and I got a chance to spend some time with his father, Charlie, who had a lot of business things go awry, and he's dealt with a lot of adversity in his own life. And I know that's been something that Chris has been inspired by. And so to see the family have that moment in that Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, I can count on one hand the amount of times we've had, Mark Munoz in the Philippines, just these moments that are almost too good to be true. Chris Lytle after his final performance. But you just can't help, even if you're a Boston guy, feel good for what Chris Weidman was able to accomplish. And not that he didn't face adversity in this fight, but just a huge moment for Chris Weidman, and one that figures to be hard for him to top, I would think, going forward.
It's amazing what he was able to do. There was a tremendous amount of pressure on this guy. Didn't have a whole lot of good luck in New York, by the way.
Right.
And for him to be able to kind of defeat those demons in his head and say, I am going to come back. Here he is fighting in his hometown with a tremendous amount of pressure yet again, having facing a possible 4-fight losing streak. I mean, that's crazy. And seeing where he came from, being as the champion and then being on this terrible run, you start to question yourself as an athlete, as a fighter. Do you still have it? What's going on with your training? Blah, blah. And for him to keep that faith and fight through and then battle back at the end of that scary first round where he got knocked down up against the cage, it looked like it was going to be all over for him. He had a tremendous round up into that point.
Right.
You weren't quite sure how he was going to come back in the second, or if he would have enough gas later on in those rounds 4 and 5.
Right.
Didn't need to get there, but Chris Weidman, man, showed a tremendous amount of heart, battling back from adversity both before the fight and during the fight. I was super impressed, very happy with the game.
And I've got to imagine, Ken Flo, part of the reason you picked him is because maybe intangibly you just felt like he was going to be a hard man to beat in that building that night, given what had happened over his previous 3 fights. So at the end of that first round, I mean, he gets hit with that left hand, and he recovered so quickly so as to break his own fall. Yet still, when he went back to the corner 30 seconds later, he didn't know. He thought it was a right hand that hit him, and it ended up being a left hand. So my question for you, and again, I am not a lifelong martial artist, but I said to TJ on Monday, and I said to Ray, maybe I didn't say it to Ray directly, but I felt like if he hadn't lost 3 straight fights, he might not have recovered as quickly. Like, I just feel like mentally he was in such a concentrated and focused place that losing just wasn't an option. So when he got knocked down and for a brief moment maybe separated from consciousness, he went into recovery mode so quickly because I just think mentally he was just like, I can't lose in this building. Am I crazy?
No, absolutely. And I think that that's going to be one of those moments that's going to drive him moving forward, knowing that he can battle back from something like that, because if there was a knock on Chris Weidman, and Michael Bisping, of course, was exaggerating there, but, is that when things start to get tough, maybe he gives up a little bit. I don't believe that to be true, but that's kind of the knock on Chris a little bit. I think that's one of those instances where he's not going to give up. And people forget about his war against Machida, where he ate shots and kept battling back, kept pushing forward. So, I think that's one of those moments that's going to drive him as a fighter.
So we mentioned Darren Elkins off the top of the show, the damage.
Man.
I mean, do I get one of those tattoos or do I wait?
Should.
Do I
the
wait?
Exact same one.
I told my wife I wanted, when I retire, to get the same game bread on the neck that George Masvidal has.
Right.
I love that tattoo.
I would go with the crown here on the the wings, like Cody.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't know. I mean that. See, if
aggressive.
I go game,
it's aggressive.
It is. If I go game bread though on the neck, and I can put makeup over that, and
That's
whereas
true.
if you're going whole neck piece, I don't know. There's not enough makeup in the world.
Hey, sorry to interrupt.
Grow out the beard.
Has anybody actually ever seen the 209 on video? I know we've seen photos. But have we seen?
Well, where's the video camera?
Well, I mean,
it's
right there. Yeah. You got
there's a fucking 209.
That shit is
get
real,
closer if you
dog.
can. There it is.
Right there.
See, not photoshopped.
Yeah.
No.
Not like a pen, Sharpie.
real.
That is the 209 in all its glory, and I fucking love it. So I'm glad I have it. So Darren Elkins, right? 5 consecutive wins at 145 pounds. He's like 24-5. Other than Max Holloway, nobody's won more fights at 145 pounds in the UFC, right? Creeping a little bit, right? I mean, so I guess the question is, I mean, how far can this guy take it, right? I mean, he beats Dennis Bermudez as an underdog. He's now won 2 straight fights as underdog, Mirsad Bektik and now Dennis Bermudez. How far can this guy take it just with a work ethic and a suffocating style that few men recently have been able to solve?
I think he can go pretty far. I don't know if he can be a champion in that division. I don't know if he has the talent, I guess. I don't want to say talent. I want to say maybe athleticism or the experience in the striking game. But what I've seen is a drastic improvement in his striking, especially in regards to his footwork, how he gets in and gets out. The boys over at Team Alpha Male have done a phenomenal job with him. They really have. They're just great coaches over there. Obviously, so much experience as fighters, that's going to help. He looked good, man. He really did. And this is a guy who always had toughness, always had a great chin, but what he lacked was kind of the striking experience, the ability to kind of mix things together and mix in his strikes, and he has improved a tremendous amount. And getting that win was huge for him. Huge.
So he is sort of somewhat reluctant to embrace the whole star power thing, right? So I was talking to Justin Buchholz yesterday, who's here to corner Andre Touchy-Feely. And he said, Darren walks out to this song that like one of his pipe fitting buddies produced or something because he's so eternally loyal that he wants to give this guy some shine. And Justin's like, bro, like, can you start walking out to Born in the USA and like try to become a fucking star, please?
Yeah.
Like, and
fans love him. I mean, you watch him fight once, you're going to be a fan of the guy. Yeah.
So he's moved the kids to California, and certainly Darren Elkins has set himself up for another huge fight at 145 pounds. Jimmy Rivera obviously is going to be set up for a big fight here in the bantamweight division. Not sure if it'll be Dominic Cruz. I think you heard from Dominic. If there's not a belt on the line, I'm not sure that Cruz is going to make that walk. I mean, I can tell you as his friend, he has no interest in a 5-rounder on FS1. That doesn't make any sense. Right. Maybe a co-main event on the TJ Cody pay-per-view has some appeal to Dominic Cruz. But for Jimmy Rivera at this point in time, he is a guy who has waited for the right fight. And he waited for the Thomas Almeida fight, and he was out 9 or 10 months. Your thoughts on Jimmy Rivera's win over Almeida? And, I mean, let's do a little compact package who I do believe can be champion one day.
He's a crusher, man. Whew. He's a crusher. He's got power in both hands. Really like his patience as a fighter. Excellent wrestler. Knowledgeable on the ground as well, but he knows how to put together his punches, his combinations, gets in, gets out, doesn't take a whole lot of damage. And the fact that he can get out of there against a very tough guy in Thomas Almeida without getting knocked out. Just an accomplishment in and of itself. But to see how many times he knocked down Thomas Almeida just showed what kind of fighter this guy is. He's very dangerous, man.
You're right, though, that he is patient, and he sticks, and he moves, and he is in and out. I said to Dominic Cruz after the fight, I said, he's not necessarily much of a finisher. And Dominic was like, yes, he is, dude. And I'm like, well, I'm just saying the numbers tell you his finishing rate is below 30%, juxtaposed against a guy like Thomas Almeida, whose finishing rate in his wins is 95%, and certainly the competition being what it is. But Jim Rivera hasn't necessarily been much of a finisher, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily for any lack of effort. I mean, do you think that the finishes could come? I mean, the competition's only getting better, so that wouldn't necessarily appear to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had his opportunities to take out Almeida. I think that he was trying to be patient. He was trying to not blow out his arms and kind of energy for that fight. I think he was, maybe a little bit cautious on the ground perhaps. But, I think he took the right approach. He got the win at the end of the day, and that's the most important thing.
20 straight wins.
It's amazing.
Right? I mean, imagine winning 20 straight fights and not getting a UFC title fight. I mean, of course, he's only 5-0 in the UFC, but I think Tiger Schulman's MMA might get their first UFC champion. Maybe Jimmy Rivera will be the guy. So we closed the show on Monday by talking about this epidemic of bonus begging by UFC fighters. And I tried to say this as softly and humbly as I can say, because this is just the mixed martial arts fan in me, maybe a little bit more educated because I work for the promotion, but you see guys on the microphone, post-fight interviews, begging for a $50,000 bonus, going over to Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard and saying, hey, dude, give me that $50K. I mean, these guys, it might be the first fight of the night, right? There's still 24 guys who have a chance to go get that bonus, and they go over to the fence. They say, Sean, Mick, it changed my life forever. Give me the bonus. It's just not a good look, and I wanted to get your opinion on it, right? But if you want to use that post-fight interview to spin your career forward or call somebody out, I think that makes a lot of sense. But more often than not, Kenny, the guys who beg for the bonus checks don't get them.
Don't get them. I know.
It sounds harsh, but...
but I think, I agree with you. I don't think it looks good. I didn't do it as a fighter. I just thought it looked kind of cheesy a little bit, and I try, I got a few in my day, but I try not to ask for them on the mic. I'd much prefer to use that time to ask for a big fight. I think that's the way to go, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're asking for it or not. That's not going to be the difference. The difference is going to be your performance, and that's what they need to get. And I think that saying it on television, saying, hey, give me that 50 G's or whatever, it doesn't look good.
I actually believe that it may work against you, and that's not informed speculation from talking to Sean or Mick, but it's not hard in my seat when someone comes over and begs for the bonus for me to look at their reaction, and it's just not a great narrative
Just
all
kick
the time.
ass.
So, just kick ass, take names, and that's my 2 cents on that. So when Michael Bisping called in, we were talking about Tyron Woodley and Damian Maia, and more on Woodley certainly coming up here with his chief corner, Dean Thomas. But as far as Maia's approach to this fight, what does he need to do? If you're his chief corner, what are you advising Damian Maia to do to get past Tyron Woodley?
Well, I think that he needs to look for those reactive takedowns, number one. Damian Maia has impeccable timing. He pressures fighters. And baits them in to kind of look for a big shot. Now, Tyron Woodley obviously possesses one of the most devastating overhand rights in the game right now. He closes that gap very, very quickly. Now, for him to do that early on against an energetic and strong and larger opponent in Damian Maia would be a big mistake. Damian Maia will pressure you, bait you in to try to throw something big, and then he takes you down. And he finishes. I mean, once he gets it on the leg early, more often than not, he's going to finish that takedown. And if he gets on top of anybody in that division, he's most likely going to finish you, or at least put a lot of damage on you. He'll advance his position, get to mount or take the back, and beat you up and tire you out in that process. Tyron needs to be extremely patient in this fight. Now, another little wrinkle to Maia's game, which we have seen before, but we saw it against Masvidal because Masvidal has excellent wrestling, is he dropped into half guard. And that's a position that you see a lot in jiu-jitsu. Damian Maia will go right to half guard and look for a sweep from that position. He knows how to defend from the strikes from there, gets very tight. He either takes your back or he gets underneath you and reverses you. So that's something that Tyron's going to have to watch for. If he is stuffing the takedown, if he is defending that single, if he is sprawling, he has to be careful to not let Damian Maia get that underhook when he goes to half guard. From there, Maia's just a beast.
Woodley is not the grappler that Jorge Masvidal is. Is that fair to say?
I think he's not the jiu-jitsu guy that Masvidal is. I think Masvidal has very underrated jiu-jitsu. Everyone in American Top Team says he's an absolute beast on the mat. I don't think Tyron is that much of a threat. I think positionally Tyron is very good. Wrestling, obviously, I think Tyron's at a higher level than Masvidal. But as far as the pure jiu-jitsu game, he's probably not at Masvidal's level, yes.
So when I talked to Robbie Lawler on Tuesday, it was the quickest fighter call I've ever had. It was 54 seconds. I could just tell that he had better places to be. And that's fine. I know Robbie pretty well. But one of the things he said at this point was like, dude, I know what I need to do, right? And then I said, hey, so Kami Barzini moved over with you with Henry Hoof. When did that all go down? He goes, I don't pay attention to any of that stuff. I was like, all right, have a good day, buddy. All the best in the fight, right? But the reason I bring it up is because Robbie Lawler at this stage of his career knows what he needs to do. And I would think Damian Maia making his 26th UFC appearance, top 5 in terms of UFC wins all time. He's actually might be tied for second, right? Only one win is Damian Maia off of Bisping's record of 20 right now. So Damian Maia basically knows what he needs to do. But when you have an abbreviated training camp and you're only able to make small changes, much of the focus for Maia is just on getting in the shape of his life and not on strategic stuff for T. Wood.
Well, no, absolutely. Maia's going to do the same exact thing for everybody, regardless, right? So it's not like he needs to work on this complicated strategy for Woodley. You know exactly what you're going to get from Maia. The question is, can you stop it? I think the big thing for Maia, their concern was getting in shape and making the weight.
All right, so the third championship fight on this UFC 214 triple header. We'll give it a little bit of shine here. And TJ DeSantis, you have worked Tanya Evinger's fight, so feel free to chime in. Chris Cyborg, minus 1,200. The comeback on Tanya Evinger is at plus 650. So a $100 bet on Tanya Evinger returns you $650. Of course, she needs to win the fight to get that return. So, Ken, for a lot of people, and we've mentioned it on the show, feel like this is a more intriguing fight than Chris Cyborg against Megan Anderson. Your expectations for the no-nonsense Tanya Evinger as she tries to shock the world here Saturday night?
Well, obviously, she needs to bring it into her world. She doesn't want to stand up with Cyborg for too long. She needs to find a way to bring this fight to the mat. And even if she can kind of get to a guard position and do something to try to maybe wrap up a guillotine, she's going to be safer. She's going to be safer there. Cyborg does have some brutal ground and pound, but I think for you the longer she stays on the feet with Cyborg, the more danger she's in. So I think she needs to kind of make it a scrap, but make it a scrap on the mat. Does not want to be trading too much, especially on the outside with someone like Cyborg.
TJ, Tanya's wrestling coach has said that in terms of training partners, man or woman, no one is as ruthless as Tanya Evinger. So she does bring a lot to the table. The question to you, is it going to be enough to beat the consensus greatest of all time?
You're going to find out quick.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Tanya is truly as credentialed as any other national or international level wrestler. When you look at what she's done, I mean, she should have been an Olympian in 2004. They didn't have her weight class. There's a clear path to victory for her that was, I think, sort of exposed a little bit by Daria Ibragimova, who Cyborg fought a year ago. Ibragimova, a good Sambo player, worked a single leg for like 4 minutes to her detriment because she just got elbowed in the face. But we've seen that, you know, grit and toughness will get you someplace with Cyborg if you can get her to react. Tanya needs to do that. At plus 600, I don't think that's a safe bet. But at plus 205 to go over a round and a half, if you're looking for a line in this fight, that's where you go. Because I think the durability of Tanya Evinger gets this to the third round.
So you like that over 7.5 minutes. How about DeSantis checking out the propositions for UFC 214? All right, try to get Dean Thomas, and I just want to get Ken Flo's thoughts on a couple other fights here. So the prelims are going to be on FXX.
Right.
I don't know if I get that channel.
I think you do. I think it's on Basic. I think.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure.
I get FS2.
I'm going to have to search for it myself.
Yeah, you're going to have. All right. So the prelims are on FXX. How about the fact that you're getting Aljamain Sterling, Renan Barão, and Jason Knight, Ricardo Lamas on fucking FXX? I mean, these guys could easily be fighting on pay-per-view. Those are two huge fights. Those are fights that could main event FS1 shows, and you're getting them on the prelims.
And matchups. It's not even about the names. The matchups are going to deliver as far as excitement. Jason Knight is one of the most exciting fighters I've seen in the last probably 10 years. I mean, the guy is nonstop action. The problem with Jason Knight is hitting him. If you don't hit him, he'll be fine. He gets more dangerous the more times you hit him. So that's a great fight. And, of course, Sterling and Barão is going to be fire.
All right, well, time permitting, we might even get quick picks from Ken Flo on those two prelims. He'll give you more analysis on the main card predictions, but maybe get some picks on those two prelims from Ken Flo and Matthew Holt coming up in a little bit. But now joining us on the guest line, probably on my Mount Rushmore of the best people in MMA. I mean, I know you can only have 4 people on there, but UFC veteran, coach of the year, American Top Team's Dean Thomas is with us. What's up, my man?
Hey, man, what's happening, man? That's quite the introduction. Listen, I'm just excited to be back on the show with you guys, man. You guys are some of my favorite people, too. John, you live down the street from me, and Kenny, you beat me up. You know what I'm saying? So I love you guys.
We don't have fighters on the show, except BJ Penn was the only exception, but fighters who beat Kenny aren't welcome, so thankfully he beat you, and here you are.
Awesome.
He kicked my ass in training a lot, though, I'll tell you that.
So what's going on, man? What's the pulse of Tyron Woodley? I know I saw you this morning at the Host Hotel. I feel like there are a few guys who could fly across the country and do the Fox desk a week before a fight. But if anybody can handle that type of distraction/challenge, I think it's your boy T. Wood.
Well, you know what? It's not really a distraction for him. That's what he does. I mean, when you're good at something and you're capable of doing it, you can do it. I mean, he's got to do something in life. I mean, what's he going to do, watch Netflix? Right. He might as well be out sitting at a desk talking about fights. I mean, he's good at it. So, a lot of people were wondering, like, why is he doing that a week before his fight? Honestly, I mean, it's probably the best thing for him. I mean, what more could he be doing? What else should he be doing?
And also, having worked with Tyron, I feel like he's one of the most calm and composed dudes in the game. I mean, it seems like nothing ever phases him. He just kind of keeps it even-keeled all the time, and I think it helps him during the fights as well, Dean.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very cerebral type person. Not only just fighter, but type person. He's extremely smart, extremely intelligent, and he's always in his head. Maybe sometimes he's in his head a little too much because he's such a thinker. Yeah. But you're right, man. He's just such a calm, composed, poised individual that it really carries out in his fights, and that's why you see him fight the way he does. And sometimes, I think it may kill him sometimes because it makes him a little too patient because he just think a lot.
So what are the big challenges, man, for getting ready for this fight against Damian Maia? Who are some of the training partners that you set him up with for this one?
Well, Damian is such a brilliant Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player. We all know that. And I think that was the reason why a lot of guys didn't do well against him, is that they didn't respect it. Because, let's face it, over the years, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has kind of taken a back seat as a prominent martial art. A lot of guys got more into wrestling and boxing, so they just didn't respect jiu-jitsu as much. And that was something that we made sure we didn't make the same mistake as a lot of other guys. So, I mean, we focused a lot on jiu-jitsu. And, and we brought in Jucal, Juan Carnero, and Antonio Carlos Jr., a good buddy of mine, Shoeface. And one of the best jiu-jitsu players currently, we had Rodolfo Vieira.
Oh, wow.
Give us some. Yeah, so, I mean, we really did our homework. We really prepared properly. And, I can't see this fight going any other way than just Tyron having his way and getting his hand raised.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, who aren't familiar with the jiu-jitsu game, Rodolfo Vieira, one of the best jiu-jitsu guys we've had probably in the last 10 years. He's won it all. And now he's getting ready for mixed martial arts, right? He's had a couple fights under American Top Team, correct?
Yeah, he's fought before, and I've worked with him, and let me tell you, Kenny, his top pressure is unreal.
That's what I hear.
It's unbelievable. So, I feel like if he was in the UFC and he gets any of these guys down to his weight, nobody's getting from underneath him. So, I mean, it was very important for us to pick his brain a little bit and get some working with him, and I can't thank him enough for being so gracious and extending himself to us in that way.
Did you have to get inside Tyron's head for this one? Because I know he wanted some bigger fights. He wanted other names. And for Damian Maia, I think that, Tyron was saying that a lot of people don't respect the jiu-jitsu game as much. And although anyone who has fought or been involved with jiu-jitsu respect the game of Damian Maia, was it something that you had to kind of get Tyron Woodley fired up for, or no?
No, not really. Tyron is, he gets himself fired up. The thing was, he just wanted to make sure he fought on an appropriate card. That was the biggest thing for him.
Right.
It was never a matter of like who he was fighting or he was going to be not as motivated to fight a certain opponent. He just wanted to make sure he got on the right card.
Yeah.
And that was kind of why he wanted to get on this card, because it's a bigger card. He didn't want to fight on a Fox show or a small card. He really wanted to be on the biggest stage that he could possibly be on, and that was the pay-per-view with John Jones and Cormier. So, like, he really wanted to just get on this card. I think he would have fought anybody.
Gotcha.
Just to be on this card.
Dean Thomas with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. So, for a coach, fight to fight, camp to camp, are you able to really assess where your elite fighters are at relative to previous fights? Like, can you look at Tyron going into this fight and say mentally or physically he's in a better or worse place than he was, say, going into the Stephen Thompson fight? Like, can you see that stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's difficult, too. I mean, we still, depending on where he's at mentally and physically, I mean, he still has to show up and do his job for those 25 minutes. But I can definitely tell a difference. And, the first Wonder Boy fight, he wasn't 100% where he needed to be. He had a lot of other distractions, in his personal life. It just kind of kept him out of it. But this fight is different. I think he got the card that he wanted. Damian Maia is a very great opponent for him. And he's mentally and physically, at the top of his game. He's sharp right now.
Well, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, and certainly the focus for you guys is on Damian Maia, but I think most people believe that if and when George St. Pierre returns, that perhaps the toughest fight for him would be against Tyron Woodley. And Tyron doesn't feel like GSP wants to fight him or will fight him. I would imagine you subscribe to that belief as well, that you think GSP wants nothing to do with your guy?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. I mean, GSP has been talking about, I don't even know if he wants to fight at all. Let's face it, he's been talking about fighting for the last couple of years. He's really made no, viable showing that he really, 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 truly wanted to fight. Mm-hmm. And then when he said, okay, I'll fight, he wanted to fight possibly the easiest opponent for him with the most reward, and that's Michael Bisping. I mean, he's never made mention of wanting to fight Tyron, which baffles me because he was the former, welterweight champion of the world, and now Tyron holds that title. You would think that he'd want that fight.
Right.
Now, God forbid something happens and, Tyron slips on a banana peel and Damian Maia wins, then I can see George St. Pierre coming out the woodwork saying, yeah, I want to fight Damian Maia.
Right.
But there's no way, and I still don't believe this, that if Tyron wins, that George St. Pierre wants to fight him.
Interesting. You hear how concise Dean Thomas is? I mean, he acts like a guy who's got a radio show on ESPN Radio in South Florida, and that's exactly what he has. See,
he's done this before.
Nothing long-winded about it. We like that. All right, so we'll get you out of here on this. Dana White looking for a fight. Maybe a little bit of a hiatus here for the show because of the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. Do you have your schedule going forward now?
Yeah, well, they told us that we'd come back filming in September, and I'm hoping that happens because I love hanging out with those guys, and I love entertaining everybody. I mean, there's nothing I won't do on camera for the entertainment of other people. So I'm really looking forward to coming back in September. But you know what? Dana White's got the Contender Series going on right now, so I wish him success in that. I'm sure he's brought in a lot of talented guys. I know some of the guys that's fighting for him, so I'm sure that's going to be very successful. But I promise you, in September, when the show comes back, we're going to be killing it.
And we can't wait to see it. You've been a great addition to that show. I did lie, though. That was not my final question. I can't let you go without at least asking about Amanda Nunes. Of course, I know you guys are very close, and she loves you dearly as a friend and a coach. She was unable to make the walk on July 8th, and obviously I think it had to be hard that the promotion didn't necessarily have her back, but I guess you can put that narrative to rest if you beat Valentina Shevchenko in September in Edmonton.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, I get it, man. You know, they invested a lot of money and a lot of time promoting that fight. And then when she didn't make the walk, I could see the frustration that they had, and I could see why they were upset with her. But, you know, we respect Valentina so much that, you know, I think it would be doing her and the fans a disservice to have Amanda fight her at less than, you know, 100%. Now, obviously, you know, you could say nobody fights at 100%, but if she's fighting at 40%, and she's definitely doing herself a disservice, and we respect Valentina that much to say, you know what, let's just run this another time. Now, when she does put her away, I hope that just silences everybody and lets everybody know that Amanda is the top dog in this game.
All right, there he is, media mogul Dean Thomas. You can see him in Tyron Woodley's corner this weekend at UFC 214 on pay-per-view. He's got his own radio show down south. Dana White looking for a fight. All good things, buddy. Thank you for the time today, and wish you and T. Wood and the whole team the best of luck this weekend, bud.
Thank you, my friend. I'll see you guys later.
Dino.
All right, there he is, Dean Thomas with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. So Matt Serra told me that Dean Thomas is on Dana White looking for a fight because Sarah recommended him to Dana White. It's like Matt's claim to fame, and I thought it was a brilliant stroke by Matt when Nick the Tooth went away to add Dean Thomas to that show. I think maybe the only smarter thing was us putting Ray Longo, giving him a weekly spot on our podcast. So good stuff there from Dean Thomas. And, you know, really a nice 1-2 punch, I think, with him and Tyron Woodley.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to get Matthew Holt here in a minute for the main event challenge. We'll get some picks going on UFC 214. So last bit from me on Jones and Cormier. I just think there's obviously so much at stake here. But for Daniel, you know, two-time U.S. Olympian, he really says that the emotions – we've heard John Jones asked a million times about the emotion. But for DC, Kenny, he feels like it's an aid and a benefit in training, but it's not anything that negatively affects him on fight night. Like sometimes I wonder how you can be walking to the octagon for something so emotional, right? For a clear rivalry grudge match and not have that affect you either positively or negatively. But DC really believes that the fight's the fight, and he channels it into good things in training camp. But when fight night arrives, it really is just another fight.
Yeah, and I think a part of DC's thing, and it's I think a part of who he is to give people a hard time. If you've hung out with DC more than 5 seconds, he loves making fun of you. He loves getting underneath your skin, and I think that's been a part of his thing, is getting under the skin of John Jones and testing his mental capacity.
All right, well, the wait is over for UFC 214 predictions. Ken Flo, how about Ken Flo? No fucking notes? This guy don't need anything. I got all this shit.
This pen you gave me doesn't work, that's why.
I'm sorry, we'll get you another pen here in a second here. Sorry about that, Ken Flo. Let me get you a pen, and while we're doing that, let's get ready for the main event challenge.
It's the main event challenge. Anik.
The time is most definitely now.
Florian.
I finish fights! I'm going to do everything possible to win.
The main event challenge. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
All right, so Team Anik led Team Florian 58-57 heading into UFC Long Island. Ken Flo wins the week.
Yeah, buddy.
3-1. Daniel Lodato, who I met, by the way, at the arena. He made picks for my squad. So you both hit on Jimmy Rivera, both missed on John Vellante and Dennis Bermudez, but Ken Flo had Chris Weidman as an underdog, thus 2 big points there. And it means that the Flo has regained the lead, 60-59, heading into UFC 214. You nod as if you just...
And you know it!
You nod like you're just fully expectant that one way or another you're going to win at the end of the year, but we're calling in the big guns yet again. So joining us today to offer up his analysis, predictions for UFC 214, COO at CG Analytics and the VP of Business Development for CG Technology, recurring guest from Las Vegas, Nevada. Matthew Holt is with us. Matthew, thank you for the time today, sir. How are you?
Great. I mean, look, we're heading into what is absolutely the biggest card of 2017, and is thus far, at least in 2017, is going to be the most betting handle we've seen on any UFC card thus far this year.
Well, to that end, you have said to me privately you kind of like the fact that we're doing this on Thursday because there has already been some betting activity, certainly more so than we would have doing the show in our traditional Monday slot. So how much action have you seen roughly on UFC 214 to date?
To put it into perspective, we've taken more money on the Cormier-Jones rematch, that fight alone, than we took on the entire UFC on Fox 25 card throughout the entire card.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of that has been John Jones action?
So this is a really great pros versus Joes scenario here where a lot of the big bets from really sharp MMA players are coming here on John Jones. But similar to the Conor McGregor-Floyd Mayweather fight, people bet what they want to see, and whether anyone likes these two fighters or not, John Jones is being portrayed as the bad guy here. Daniel Cormier is the good guy. When you can get the good guy at plus money, that tends to attract a lot of public betting action. And that's what we're seeing here is the public is heavily siding with underdog Daniel Cormier, where the bigger sharp bets tend to be on the greatest of all time, John Jones.
Right, and it's interesting because John Jones is going to be the heel in most equations, and he is here. But I can almost guarantee you that Honda Center crowd is going to be pro Johnny Bones and anti-Daniel Cormier. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I do believe John Jones will have the crowd on fight night. Hey, real quick, Matthew, because you mentioned Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor, I've read that people are expecting that this fight will do a Super Bowl-type handle, if not surpass it. I mean, is that what the projection is in Las Vegas, that more money would be bet on this fight than the Super Bowl?
Absolutely, and at this point, we're on track to absolutely crush it. To put it into perspective, we've done over $2 million of handle already, and we're still a month away from the fight on the Floyd Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao fight, which was the biggest handle fight in the history of sports betting in Nevada. We personally at our place did $4.6 million. We already are over $2 million in handle with still a month to go. We expect to do maybe 12 to 15, maybe even 20 million alone just at our properties.
Wow.
All you can handle, bro. Well, we will certainly have you back on, maybe even during that fight week to get the pulse at that time. But let's get to the picks, Matthew, for the main card. Feel free, of course, to sprinkle in anything you feel is relevant when it comes to the action on that fight or otherwise. But first fight out of the chute here, Jimmy Manuwa minus 180 against Volkan Oezdemir, who is the plus 140 underdog. Oezdemir has rather quickly but not so quietly vaulted here into the top 5 on the strength of back-to-back UFC wins, the most impressive of which, of course, his last time out, less than 30 seconds, I believe, to get past Misha Cirkunov. A lot of people online seem to like this price on Jimmy Manuwa. Matt, your thoughts on Manuwa Oezdemir this weekend?
So, coincidentally, Volkan Oezdemir is our third biggest liability to the book right now, as there has been a lot of action, and he has been the most popular underdog outside of Daniel Cormier in the main event on this entire card. I actually feel like the line has gotten so low on Jimmy Manuwa that I actually am going to play Jimmy Manuwa in this fight. I think his level of competition has been much better. I like the recent form that he's been in. And look, if you go back, while the 30-second knockout was really impressive of Cirkunov, if you go back to the St. Peru fight, then we get a Oezdemir who was gassed, he was sloppy, that fight didn't look great. Yes, he got the win over St. Peru, but it wasn't the most impressive performance. And outside of that, I mean, a lot of his wins come on the regional scene. He does have 2 fights in Bellator, which he split, losing 1 and winning 1. I actually like the pedigree of Jimmy Manuwa here. I like the experience level, and if I can lay less than $1.70, I'm actually going to be on the favorite.
So Jimmy Manuwa, Ken Flo, had a chance, as you know, to go to the UFC even earlier. Joe Silva tried to sign him, but he didn't feel like he was ready. I asked him this week, what's the difference between this Jimmy Manuwa and the guy that fought Alexander Gustafsson in March of 2014? And he was like, bro, totally different fighter. He said at that time he was still finding his feet. Yep. He says his levels have gone way up. He's now ready to be a UFC champion, and certainly his current form, I think, dovetails with that type of mentality. Your thoughts on Manuwa here? Relatively short price, less than a 2-1 favorite here against Oezdemir.
Yeah, and I think it's always a good thing. Anytime you can train with a guy that beats you, you have the ability to kind of close that gap, understand that guy's game, figure it out, gain that confidence. And I think that's been one of the reasons for the biggest change in his game, both on a technical level and confidence-wise. So I like Manuwa in this one. I think Manuwa gets it done. I think he's going to finish Oezdemir.
And Volkan Oezdemir, for a while, he just had a hard time finding opponents. You know, we've sort of painted him with this brush of being just a really great training partner. And he said to me this week, you know, I just couldn't get fights. And now he's getting fights. He's 14-1, number 5 in the world. And if he beats Jimmy Manuwa, depending on how Jones and Cormier shakes out, Volkan Oezdemir could be fighting for a UFC title. All right, next up, Matthew, Robbie Lawler entrenched right now as a minus 160 favorite. The comeback on Donald Cowboy Cerrone is at plus 130. Of course, the extended layoff here for Robbie Lawler, about a year since he relinquished the title against Tyron Woodley. And for Donald Cerrone, uncharacteristically long layoff for him. Which way you going here? Fight pretty close on paper right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the under in this fight. 2.5 rounds, and the under is about a dead pick'em. And look, Robbie Lawler has 21 finishes out of 27 fights, and Cowboy Cerrone with 24 finishes, and he seems to get finished when he loses fights. Jorge Masvidal took care of him. Rafael Dos Anjos knocked him out the second time that they fought. Anthony Pettis knocked him out when they fought. So, I mean, we have a guy in Cowboy Cerrone who's been finished 4 times. They both have huge finish rates. And this is likely to be some serious leather thrown here. I like the under 2.5 rounds at a pick'em price.
All right, Ken Flo, Donald Cerrone 4-1 at 170 pounds, idle since that loss to Jorge Masvidal back on Fox in January. I'll admit to being a little bit surprised that Cerrone was the underdog here. And again, that's just my opinion. That's not a lean one way or the other. Cerrone, Lawler, which way you going?
You know, I like the fact that, you know, obviously given Cerrone's last result, that he did take some time off. I think it's important after you get knocked out or TKO'd. And here's the thing. He's always had a problem against pressure fighters, and he's always had a problem with guys who can throw hands very well and back you up. And Robbie Lawler is that guy. And then you add the fact that he's a southpaw. It's just, I don't think it's a good style matchup for him. Can Cerrone win? Absolutely. I just think style-wise, it's not the right matchup. It's going to be exciting as hell. It's a great matchup for the fans, but I think Lawler takes this.
All right, next up, the first of 3 championship fights. Chris Cyborg right now at minus 1,200. Tanya Evinger at plus 650. So, Matthew, of course, whenever Cyborg fights, she is a prohibitive favorite. How would you be looking to bet this one if you indeed are picking Chris Cyborg, which would be my expectation here?
Yeah, and here's the problem with this fight. You can't really bet Cyborg. In fact, right now, if Cyborg wins this fight, as we all expect, the book will actually make money. Not a lot of money, just a couple thousand. But what we're seeing is a lot of people just betting $20 to $50 on the underdog because they don't want to lay that huge price with the favorite. But I'm going to look to the total here, and I think there's a really interesting total. This is a 5-round championship fight, yet the total on the fight at our book right now is 1.5 rounds, under minus 250. So if I can just get these two, if I can just get Tanya Evinger, who's a pretty tough girl, to just stay in there for a round and a half at plus 2, more than 2-1, plus 210, plus 220 range, that seems to be the safer way to bet this fight. You know, I don't want to lay 2.5 to 1 either that Cyborg's going to finish her in the first round. Maybe the fact that it's a championship fight, they both go out there, start a little bit slower, knowing that it's scheduled for 5. I'm going to take over 1.5 rounds at plus 210.
And our producer, TJ DeSantis, said that is the bet that he was looking at, and you're also getting it at plus 210, which has to be appetizing. But, Ken, those could make for an agonizing 7.5 minutes as you watch Tanya Evinger try to stay in this fight. How competitive do you think this is going to be? I'd imagine forced to make a pick here today, you're going Chris Cyborg.
I am going Chris Cyborg. I think betting-wise, that's the way to go. However, I think that Cyborg is going to win within round 1.
Okay, yeah, so you see the early finish for Chris Cyborg. All right, Matthew, Tyron Woodley right now, the minus 200 favorite against the number 1 contender, Damian Maia, who is plus 160. As I've said repeatedly, probably not the ideal circumstance for Damian Maia with the quick turnaround here. Nonetheless, he says the weight shouldn't be an issue, and he's ready to seize the moment. Your thoughts on Woodley Maia, and ultimately, which way do you lean?
Again, normally when I bet, I really try to look for strong underdogs, and I actually have a few underdogs I love on the undercard of this. Maybe we could touch on it directly after.
Sure.
But this is a case where I feel like Tyron Woodley is a really bad matchup for Damian Maia. When we look at Damian Maia's run right now, which is ultra impressive, we go back to his last 2 losses. They were both against really strong wrestlers in Jake Shields and Rory McDonald. Prior to that, his last 2 losses before that at middleweight were both to really strong wrestlers in Mark Munoz and Chris Weidman. Tyron Woodley is one of the most underrated wrestlers in the entire welterweight division. He's big, athletic, strong. He doesn't gas. Damian Maia doesn't fight in a lot of 5-round fights. And the last time he did against Ryan LaFleur, we saw how bad he was gassed at the very end. In fact, the referee had to keep asking him to stand up because he just kept trying to pull guard. He could barely stand. I don't love Damian Maia's gas tank in this. I feel like if he doesn't get the early finish, early submission over Woodley, he's going to get into deep waters with a guy who's a real matchup problem for him. I don't like laying favorites, but this price has actually stayed relatively calm with the two-way action received. I'm going to go ahead and lay Tyron Woodley in the 2-1 number.
Matthew Holt bringing it on the Woodley-Maia fight. Kenny, you were nodding your head in approval there. And Maia also had that 5-rounder that he lost to Jake Shields, in which his gas tank abandoned him a little bit that night as well. Maia Woodley, your thoughts on the fight and the price, and which way you going?
Yeah, well, let me sprinkle in some information here. You talk about Maia taking this fight on just he's got 4 weeks to prepare for that fight. He's got a month, and he's going against a guy with a 93% takedown defense rate. I mean, he's right around that number. I mean, that's ridiculous. So if Maia can't get this fight to the ground, he's not going to win. It's sacrilegious as a jiu-jitsu guy to say this, but Tyron Woodley will win this fight against Damian Maia.
All right, Matthew, finally, before we get to some underdogs and maybe a few prelims of note, this monster rivalry to be resumed. Jon Jones minus 285, Daniel Cormier at plus 225. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jon Jones opened under minus 200 and has been bet up. Your thoughts on how this championship plays out, and if you'd be so kind as to give us a method of victory and a round, I'd appreciate it, my man.
Yeah, I just don't see the difference in this fight in the first fight. And I've heard a lot of the Cormier backers say, well, what about the time off? And what about all the cage rust? And what about how he looked against Ovin St. Peru? I think he's going to be a lot more motivated here, obviously, than he was against Ovin St. Peru. And the first fight wasn't that competitive. We're not talking about a barn burner, which every round was close. Jon Jones clearly won every round. Daniel Cormier getting really close to that big 4-0 number. And you know, Jon Jones right in his prime, maybe the greatest athlete we've ever seen enter the octagon. I do think Cormier has shown in the fights with Gustafsson and especially the first fight with Rumble Johnson, where he got hit with a huge right hand, that he's durable and able to stay in fights. So I don't necessarily see this one end up being a finish. And in fact, you have to lay $1.80 on the over 4.5 rounds. So this one expected to go to the distance, but I just don't see a ton changing from the first fight. Again, I hate to lay the favorite on this, but I'm going to take Jon Jones. And I would tell bettors, if you're going to bet Jon Jones, wait until the last minute, because what we're seeing is a lot of public Daniel Cormier money start to come in, and you might be able to get a better price tomorrow night or early on fight night.
That's some good advice from Matthew Holt, and it doesn't cost you anything to hear it, so we appreciate that. All right, Ken Flo, Jon Jones, Daniel Cormier. I know it's not the easiest thing, obviously. We both have personal relationships with Daniel Cormier as one of our broadcast partners. Ultimately, how competitive do you think he will be, and can he get this job done here Saturday night?
Well, you know, I thought the first fight was very close.
Yeah, I had him up 2-1 after 3.
Yeah, and here's the thing. DC didn't fight a great fight. If I'm being candid, he didn't fight the best fight, didn't fight the smartest fight. And you can't take a round off in a 5-round championship fight against Jonathan Jones. You just can't do it. And he did that in round 4.
Took the whole thing off.
The whole thing off. And I think that, you know, he didn't expect Jon Jones to keep that pace. I think he expected Jon Jones to tire out. And I remember telling him, I said, that guy's not going to quit. This guy,
right.
If he would have quit, he would have quit against Gustafsson. And he didn't do that. And he probably trained 2 weeks for that fight.
I remember they printed the Break Bones T-shirts, and you called him and we're like, dude, you're not going to break bones.
Right, and that's the thing. And so I think he could have fought a much smarter fight. I think he will fight a smarter fight. I think it's going to be an absolute war. I think it's going to be a very close fight. But I think Cormier has spent a lot of time thinking about this fight, thinking about what he needs to do to win this fight, understanding he's going to have to walk through hell to get the win. So I'm going with Daniel Cormier by decision.
Wow. Daniel Cormier by decision.
And I need those 2 points to get the to pull away from you.
And
Joe.
You'll actually get 3 because he's at plus 225.
Oh,
so, all right, good stuff there. All right, Matthew Holt, before we let you go, and I will get to the underdogs, but 2 prelims that I am wicked interested in. Aljamain Sterling, Renan Barão, and Mississippi Mean Jason Knight against Ricardo Lamas. Both fairly close right now on paper. Any lean for you in either one of those fights?
Yeah, I'm taking Ricardo Lamas here, and I don't think this is exactly the same situation as Frankie Edgar, Yair Rodriguez, but I think it's kind of similar here. You get a really established top 5 guy in Ricardo Lamas who's fought everyone who's anyone, including, the current featherweight champion in Max Holloway, the former featherweight champion in Jose Aldo. I mean, he's fought everybody in the division against a 25-year-old who, while is on a great run, I mean, his best win in this run is probably over Chaz Skelly in his last fight. The Alex Caceres win looks a little bit less now. Caceres is on kind of a funk himself, so I just feel like this is a huge step up for Jason Knight, going from fighting unranked opponents to fighting one of the best featherweights in the world, Ricardo Lamas, who's consistently been there for a long time. And I think you're going to get the best Ricardo Lamas, similar to how you got the best Frankie Edgar against Yair Rodriguez, because he knows this is his last run. If he's going to get a third title shot like Frankie Edgar is probably going to get, like Uriah Faber got with that third title fight, if you're going to get another title shot after losing to Aldo, you need to go on a run now. He's on a good win over Charles Oliveira, and at an underdog price. Look, I know I'm getting the proven commodity in Ricardo Lamas at plus money against a guy who's never beaten a ranked opponent. I got to go with Lamas here.
And Lamas did open as the slight favorite, and I guess Jason Knight has been bet to be the slight favorite now. All right, Matthew, any other underdogs that you're looking to back this weekend, or was Lamas really the guy you centered on?
Yeah, Lamas was my favorite, but I also like Brian Ortega. I know he's had some issues outside the cage, especially after the what was the fight where he came back? The Clay Guida fight. Yep. After the Clay Guida fight, he had some issues outside the cage, and now we're talking about an over 12-month layoff for Brian Ortega. But I like this kid. I like the way he fights. I like his composure in there. I mean, he was getting beat by Clay Guida, and he still had the composure to stay in the fight and get that finish in the third round. And before that Guida fight, a lot of people were talking about Ortega as one of the really up-and-coming prospects, especially after his finish of Diego Brandao, his finish of Diego Tavares. I like Carnero here, but I think his jiu-jitsu is going to be a little bit overrated in this situation as a big, as a favorite here.
Yeah.
Because Ortega's a tough guy to take to the ground, and his jiu-jitsu is pretty tough too. And I think on the feet, Ortega's going to enjoy some pretty substantial advantages at a plus price. I think you have to take Brian Ortega.
Yeah, I was surprised to see T-City as the betting underdog, and he really feels like he's a dark horse and the forgotten guy in this division, and he'll be looking to make up for lost time Saturday night. All right, Matthew Holt on Twitter. You can find him at Matthew Holt VP. Thank you, my man. We look forward to talking to you again soon, likely before Conor and Floyd in a few weeks, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Kenny. Enjoy the card, and best of luck.
All right, there he is, Matthew Holt, live from Las Vegas. Ken Flo, Aljamain Sterling, Renan Barão. Just curious to get your thoughts on this very quickly on the way out. So Aljo right now minus 138. Renan Barão is at plus 108. Renan told me the next time we do an interview, it's going to be all in English. So he spent this entire training camp in Arizona. Not sure if it'll pay dividends or not. Do you think Sterling deserves to be the favorite, and ultimately, do you think he gets the job done?
I do. I think Sterling deserves to be the favorite. I think he's a little bit more consistent when it comes to his performances. You know what Sterling is going to show up for the most part. With Barão, you don't. And obviously, I think this is advantageous for him, that the fight's going to be at 140 pounds and not 135. I do think he still struggles to make that weight.
Yeah.
But I think he is making the right move going back down, and hopefully that means that he's been more disciplined and has his diet in order. I just think that for Sterling, he really has improved as a striker. I think he's going to have the advantage when it comes to the wrestling game. I don't know if he can get Barão to his back. Has Barão actually still not been taken down?
No.
He's been knocked down, and that's the only way you're going to get him on his back. I don't know if Sterling can do that, but I think Sterling can find a way to pressure him and get the decision win.
And Sterling just feels like his style is not just dynamic, the word that we trot around entirely too much, but just everything about his game is unorthodox. He feels like his wrestling is, his grappling is.
And standing up for as long as he did for the last couple fights, I think is only going to help his confidence. And I think he still needs to mix in takedowns, of course, but I think that's going to help him, feel confident out there against Barão.
And Barão has said he wishes that California was giving him the chance to cut down to 136 pounds, but all indications are that if he can handle the 140, that his next fight will be back down in the bantamweight division. So All right, buddy. Good to see you, man. I mean,
Awesome
this is
to
kind
see
of
you,
fun.
man.
It's a little bit more fun than doing
When are
this
you moving?
cross-country.
When are you moving to LA? That's the question.
You need to call my wife.
All right.
Start
All right.
laying it on thick. Text her. Tell her
Done.
that we can move the daughters into Ken Flo's house. And
Done.
Yeah, because we certainly cannot afford to live here. All right. Thank you to our guests, Michael Bisping, Brandon Gibson, Dean Thomas, and Matthew Holt. Actually, quick turnaround for us. We're coming right back on Monday, I believe.
Yes,
so
sir.
full UFC 214 recap for you coming up then. You can see Ken Flo on the desk this weekend. I'll be working the fights with Joe Rogan and Dominic Cruz. Prelims on FXX, and then the biggest pay-per-view of 2017 to date. Coming up 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. With that, for TJ DeSantis and Ken Flo and John Anik, until next week. Thank you all for watching, listening. Yo fucking later.
The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast is a TJ DeSantis production. Its content is intended for private use only.